You know when you're trying to do that thing to unlock it, and you're always like a button ahead, and you're like, no, I want to go back. That's what I was trying to do. Well, where are all my camping people at? 1 person, 2 people. Really? That's it? We're in Scappoose, and we only got like 4? All right, well, I guess this is where I'm supposed to be. We do have a church camp out that's coming up at the end of this month, July 30th through August 1st. Now, there's only 6 spots left. Okay, there's only 6 spots. So if you go onto our app, you can check out the events page, and there's a little spot there that should take you to a spot that you can reserve your place. But it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be cornhole. There's going to be horseshoes. I'm bad at both of those things, so you can beat me and make yourself feel a little bit better. There's going to be some time of acoustic worship, s'mores. I'm going to be making coffee in the morning, and it's not going to have the coffee grounds in it unless you like that kind of thing, and that's fine. But if you're not a camper, which apparently is like everybody in this room, we're having a church picnic on the 31st. And if camp is not your thing, it's up at the same spot where we're going to be camping at. So you can come and just eat with everyone, be in fellowship with everyone, and you don't have to sleep in the dirt. So it's kind of nice. Also, some of the things that are coming up this next month, in August 16th through the 21st, we're going to be doing Vacation Bible School, which is an awesome opportunity to be able to show kids Jesus and just to read the Bible with them and kind of impart to them, hey, what does the Bible say about you? What does the Bible say about God? But we really need volunteers. So if you're in here and you're not doing anything with Now You Know, so you can reserve it in your calendar, to come and volunteer. We would love people to teach, lead games, just hang out, make sure everything's safe. Another thing that's coming up at the end of September, we have a save the date for the women's retreat that's going to be coming up. Come on. Fall is quickly approaching, so kind of make sure that you can go online and make time to be able to reserve those spots. Well, I just want to encourage everybody this morning. Let's go ahead and stand up. We're going to get into worship this morning. We're going to sing out. We're going to sing loud. We got words up on the screen for you, so I just want to encourage you to sing out this morning. Sing the dark. The dark tried to hide you and steal you away. But death tried to keep you inside of the grave. The enemy fought you. He tried, but he lost. You cannot be stopped. Cried for freedom, you told out the Lord. Yes, you did, God. The weight of our burdens, you carried it all. Yeah. Our fears and our failures together, as strange as neighbors, our blood is one. But children of generations, of every nation, of kingdom come. So don't let your heart be troubled. Oh, hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Oh, fix your eyes on this one truth, that God is madly in love with you. Take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Come on, let me hear you sing. Oh, swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus, yes it is. But swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All His children, clean hands, pure hearts, Come on, can we pray this morning? Dear Heavenly Father, God, I just thank you that you are here with us. Lord, as your word says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, Lord, you are here. And God, this morning we do just come to glorify you. God, we come to lift up the name that is Jesus. God, I thank you that your word also says that your mercies are new each day. God, that each day is a fresh start. And God, this morning, for all of us in here, God, wherever we've been, God, whatever we've been through, God, whatever happened 5 minutes before walking in, 5 years before walking in, here this morning, God, I just thank you that you have made a way where there is no way. God, that we can come before you, God, that we can lay our burdens at your feet. God, that you can make a new day for us. God, that you can make all things new in our lives. Lord, I thank you for the blood of Jesus, for it covers a multitude of sins. And God, we do just come this morning to glorify you and to lift you up. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Peace be still, you are near. There's nowhere we can go that you won't shine. Redemption's a light. Our guilt withdrawn and eyes you rise. We come alive. The grave has lost. The old is gone, and you're making all things
Good morning. Can I sit here? Is that all right? Seats taken? All right, you guys remember Forrest Gump when he's getting on that bus and everybody was looking at him as he's hobbling down the aisle and they were like, seats taken. And I'm not even going to try and go further than that in an accent. It's awful. I'm not Australian, and it was definitely a Southern movie. So, yeah, but I mean, it's a cafeteria, right? We kind of recognize that stage, that scene that's set there in the video, and we look at that and we're thinking, man, I don't miss those days, you know? And you'd be right, totally right. Because when we're in middle school and when we're in high school, a lot of our energy, a lot of our focus, kind of as we interact with other people, is figuring out where we belong. Now, for me, when I was growing up in Southern California and I was making that turn into the high school eating area, we didn't have, I mean, the weather's nice, so we didn't have an indoor cafeteria. It was all outside, and just glorious sunshine days, butterflies everywhere. Was great. But the reality was, you'd make that turn in, and one of the biggest decisions on where to sit or where to eat or who to sit with was made for you based on the color of your skin. I mean, about a quarter of the school population when I was growing up was Hispanic descent, another quarter was African American, and then within those groups and even kind of outside of those groups, you'd have additional kind of mixing around, additional confusion almost about like, who are my people? And who am I supposed to sit with? And really more like, who aren't my people? And a lot of this tension for us is because what we try to do is we try to surround ourselves with people who like us. Right? We're big affirmation acceptance machines. This is what we desire almost more than anything else in life, is that we just want somebody to like us. Like, you know, whether it's our hair, our shoes, or where we're sitting for lunch. Like, we just want that to happen. And when we do that, when we're reaching for affirmation and we go one step further, is once we kind of find people who like us, we then divide further and we actually try to surround ourselves with people who are like us. Right? We're constantly in a quest to figure out who our people are. Now, as you may have been walking with your tray in the cafeteria and you may be passing the jocks tables and the preps tables, and for me, I was passing the soccer socias tables, and you're looking at the chess and the band geeks and the nerds tables where I was sitting, and you're skipping those too, and you're looking around, and I'm looking out this morning, and maybe there were some hipster tables and some goth tables, and all right, so no, not really, sorry, I didn't mean it, it's okay, it's fine, just kidding. You all are wonderful, beautiful people, and I'm not judging you at all. No, but we segment, we segregate, we kind of divide ourselves down. I mean, we go so far as to create these really unique subcultures. In fact, has anybody ever heard of a brony? A brony? Yeah, I got a couple people. For those of you who are looking at me like, would he just stop asking me questions I don't know? A brony, just to educate you, is a dude, it's a bro, a guy, not a child, a guy who just absolutely is passionate about the little kid show My Little Pony. Brony. Yeah. So there's a whole subculture of grown men who love My Little Pony. And they're passionate about what they love, and they identify well, and so, you know, they get who they are. And ladies, I hear you whispering like it's not fair, I'm not in this. You guys would be considered Pegasisters. So I think that one's cooler, actually. Pegasister. Anyway, it sounds different. But we're just in the spot where we're like, you know, I just got to find my people. And one of the reasons that we're doing that is so we can figure out who aren't our people, right? A lot of the reasons why we make decisions on things is, I want this and I don't want that. And so this ends at school, though, right? That's the good news. We go out in the world, we graduate from middle school and high school, and then we go out into the world and we're like, oh, thank goodness, we don't have to worry about figuring out who our people are anymore. Yeah, some of the shakes of the heads and the people are too shy to actually participate this morning. Good morning, by the way. I got okay. I'll just be in the back, it's fine. No, I mean, we know this doesn't end at school. What we do is we become older, more mature, we become smarter, and we become wiser, and so we choose far more difficult things to judge people upon, to decide who our people are, who our groups are. And so rather than worrying about like what's their after school extracurricular activity, we're now like, hey, what's their socioeconomic status? Who did they vote for in the last election? What do they identify as? He, she, it, them, me, we, they? What's their sexual orientation? We go so far as to even do it based upon religion. And actually, and some of you may not like this, but Christians are kind of known at being the worst at this, honestly. Like, I'm embarrassed to say that I'm in that camp, and it's just, we're actually really good at, so if we want the talent, right, we have the talent of being able to divide ourselves into these really tiny subcultures, these little bubbles, where the people in them look and act and talk and behave like each other, and everybody else on the outside can't get in. They don't belong in. They're not supposed to be in. And so we do that. We separate ourselves from the world. And this is not, as I mentioned, a problem that ends with the school days, right? This isn't a problem that we, as we get more mature and we consider ourselves more wise, that we figure out, oh, no, we're not going to do that anymore. That's going to be great. We're just going to move on. No, what we do instead is we take our groups, we insulate even further, and then we demonize the people on the outside. We exchange differences and not quite understanding of who they are into their villains. Or they're so different, they're alien, and I don't have to treat them well. And so the people on the outside of our groups, on the outside of our cliques, become these other. And we don't have to care about them. I just got to take care of me and mine. And the thing is, this is so natural, this is so built into us to do it, just from an animalistic, instinctual level, that we start this process when we are extremely young, like preschool, pre-preschool age. We start to look for and find our people. And so really it wouldn't be a problem, right? I mean, it wouldn't be really a problem. It's natural. It's supposed to happen, except that it was a problem for Jesus. And so we have to start evaluating. We have to start thinking about, like, what is it that we could maybe change in our lives? How could we approach life to maybe get more out of it, to find a better way? Because what we're seeing now with the segregation and the segmentation and the division is it's not going well. Our natural way is not really leading us forward in a way that any of us who would have looked forward said, that was a great place to go. I like that now. No, all of us would look back and say, I wish I could have changed, or I wish I could have done something differently. And so as we, in this series 90, as we journey with Jesus, as we come and we've taken in, he approached the public life, he was baptized in the Jordan River, and then we rocketed into his ministry for those 3 years, and we're following the journey of Jesus' life and public ministry. As we're doing that, it's important for us to kind of look at what he's challenging us to do in his ministry. Like, what are the things that Jesus really wanted for his people, the people that would come to identify and love him, and to say, like, he's my Lord and Savior. What would he want those people to look like? Because he was showing us, so he wants us to look like him. And so we have to watch Jesus. We have to look at Jesus. And a tricky thing for us is that while we surround ourselves with people who like us, and while we're constantly surrounding ourselves and looking for more people who are like us, Jesus wasn't like that. It gets even more difficult. I know, the hushed silence makes me uncomfortable. I'm the one who wrote this, and I was like, I don't know if I can say that, but I did. Here we are. The problem is that it's even more difficult now. It's not just that Jesus wasn't like that, it's just Jesus wouldn't like that. He would look at the behavior that he sees in the world around us. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody in particular. Everybody's guilty. And he would say, I don't like that. I'm not only not like that, but I don't like that. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's not how I designed you to be. And so we have this difficult interaction with Jesus because we naturally want to find our people. We naturally want to look and keep ourselves safe. Nobody likes to be uncomfortable, right? Nobody likes that. So interaction with people who are really different than us sometimes are uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with it, right? So we avoid that. It's a totally natural thing. But then we run up against Jesus, who was a master at stepping into areas with people who make things more difficult, who wouldn't quite fit the mold of what people at that time would say, hey, yeah, that's somebody that God loves. That's somebody that God likes. That's somebody that God is blessing. He was interacting with people who looked nothing like him, who acted nothing like him, and he was doing it well. And so while we try to find out who our people are, and more importantly, who our people aren't, Jesus was breaking through those barriers. And so he was inviting people that we would say shouldn't even have a seat at the table, right? They're wandering through the cafeteria, and we're literally saying to them, seats taken, can't sit here. And Jesus was inviting those people to sit with him. Now, we know, first century problem, right? I mean, Jesus was interacting with people who looked nothing like him and were totally like different and just like the lowest of the low and sinning against their culture. And that was a first century problem, right? Like, we don't deal with that today. I mean, I think we all know that we do. I think all of us know that we have trouble now with figuring out how to interact with people that are different than us. And we understand that even though we're living and becoming in a society that's more diverse, our society is becoming simultaneously, at the same time, concurrently. It's diverse and it's more divided. It's more segmented. It's more polarized, way ends of the spectrum. Segregated, balkanized. That means to divide people into mutually hostile groups. And homogeneous. I find it really interesting that we as a culture become more homogeneous even though we all look even more different than ever before in history. When you look into those groups, they look more and more the same. Like white milk. You can't tell it's made of thousands of parts you don't want to think about. And the thing is, we do this division, not just with the socio-economic pieces, but we've done it politically. We get that. We've seen our government is stymied in many ways. If you're thinking about a recent election that maybe had everybody kind of up in arms, we kind of understand, if you didn't vote for my candidate, you're not in, you're out, right? You're not with me, you're out. It's no longer a competition between policy choices. Now it's a bitter choice between a way of life. And again, if you're not in, you're out. And the stats bear this out. You see, in 1976, the 200th anniversary of the United States, 25% of all U.S. counties were landslide elections. What that means is that the election wasn't even close, 10 percentage points or more. It was obvious who won that election. General elections, local elections, didn't matter. 1 in 4 counties in the United States were landslide elections. Fast forward to last year, 60%. As divided as we thought, as close as we thought, as it felt like everybody had a different opinion and nobody was clumping and grouping together, 60% of all U.S. counties were landslide elections. We are being very successful finding our people, clumping together, and keeping everyone else out. We're doing a really good job of that. And when we do that, we take in news sources, we take in all sorts of information that looks like what we expect it to look like. And we divide ourselves further. We get further segmented. And again, this wouldn't be a problem. It's completely natural. It's normal. The issue is that Jesus didn't do that. Jesus wasn't like that. Jesus didn't live his life that way. And so to illustrate kind of what I think we would all kind of say is what should we do? What's the Jesus way of doing something? I mean, you showed up in church, so you're kind of expecting me to say that, right? What should we do? How do we do that? We're going to jump into a story. We're going to illustrate this in a story that talks about an interaction that Jesus had. And for the Christians in this room, those who have said, hey, I follow Jesus, I'm all about this will be a story that's really familiar to you. But it will still be challenging. It's still going to hurt a little bit. But if you're not in that camp, if literally you're like, no, I'm not a Christian, I promise you, I'm not trying to shift you off your table. You can sit with the jocks. I don't belong there. It's fine. I understand. I'm not trying to pop your bubble. But I am inviting you. It's an invitation, open hands. I am inviting you to just imagine, what would it be like if I lived life like Jesus lived life? Right? What would it look like? And so this story, we find it in the Gospel of John. John, a very close follower of Jesus, a best friend of Jesus, really. And almost the entire chapter, John 4, is where we find this story. And it begins like this, with Jesus leaving Judea and going once more back to Galilee. Now, you'll find as you're reading the Bible that he goes north and south a lot. Israel is a north-south oriented country, so Galilee and the Decapolis, that's the 10 cities, are up in the north, Judea and the southern kingdoms in the south, and Judea has Jerusalem, which is the cultural and the political center of Israel. So he's got to go back and forth if he wants to have the most influence between these two areas. So he's constantly in his ministry traveling between one and the other. And so John is relating to us another time where he was in Jerusalem, but he's heading back north towards Galilee. And it continues, and it says, now, he had to go through Samaria. Now, any and all of the Bible scholars or geography nerds in this room are definitely thinking to me no, Mike, he didn't have to do that. Literally, it's a straight shot from Jerusalem straight up. He didn't have to go through Samaria, though. Most people didn't go through Samaria. Most people went around Samaria. They followed along the banks of the Jordan, or they hopped on the other side of the Jordan. They went north so that they could avoid Samaria as much as possible. They'd only go through the little tiny corner at the top. He didn't have to go through. So when I read this, I was thinking to myself, John knows he didn't have to. It's probably more like John remembers the event. Oh, of course, Jesus had to go through Samaria. Yeah. You should, yeah, reading John like that makes it way more fun. But how many of us work harder to avoid unhappiness? I mean, this is a longer journey to go around Samaria. Most people did that because they wanted to avoid the discomfort of interacting with people that not only were different than them, but they didn't like them. I would say they hated them. All of us, I think, work harder to avoid discomfort. And so they'd take the long way around. Just not the way Jesus does things. Jesus had to go through Samaria, as John said. And so when I'm thinking about this, and I'm looking at this area, and I'm thinking, like, man, this is confusing, right? Like, why he came to save Israel as the Messiah. He's the one who came to save Israel, and I just don't quite understand what God is doing here. And honestly, it's because God's invisible, and I have trouble with that. I think many of us in here do. And so I'm reminded, before we continue on, I'm reminded of something Paul said about the titles of Jesus. Jesus carried a lot of titles: the Lamb of God, the final sacrifice, the Son of Man, the Son of God. And Paul had one that was pretty great. He was the image of the invisible God. It's as if Paul was saying to us, the audience in modern times, he was saying, hey, I know this is tough. God being invisible makes him really hard to follow. So if you want to know what God does, look at the Son. If you want to know how God feels about something, look at how Jesus feels about something. If you want to know who God would have sit at his table, why don't you watch who Jesus invites to sit at his table? And so we continue the story. It says, so Jesus came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, you do you, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. So these are the patriarchs. These are well-known people. This is in Samaria. It's one of the reasons that Samaria and the Samaritans and the Jews were separated. They had a very different view on who was more important in the grand scheme of their history. And it continues, and it says that at Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was fully man, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. John, who's ran us all the way into the middle of Samaria, quick as can be. We have no idea, did they stop on the side of the road? Did they have snacks, anything like that? But now we have this detail, noon. When you see somebody doing a narrative and then they slow down suddenly, it's important to pay attention to that. It's important to pay attention to that. Now, I don't know anybody been to the Middle East at around noon. Is that a thing? I've not. It's not me. But I did live in Arizona. So if anybody's had that experience, you know what it's like to stand on the surface of the sun. That's the Middle East at noon. Right, so John is telling us, yeah, he's tired, and it sucks outside. And there's not air conditioning at this time, first century, not 21st century, right? And so he's by this well at noon. Now, it's a well, which is a common place where the town would find their water for cooking, water for cleaning, water for living. And so most people do that in the morning, because again, noon sucks, it's hot. And so Jesus is likely to be alone at this point, right? Anybody who would be going to this well at this point is probably wanting to avoid everyone else in the morning. It's almost like they're walking through the cafeteria with their head down, hoping that nobody notices them. Hoping that whatever they feel is the most embarrassing thing about themselves, nobody notices. Or maybe everybody does notice and they just want to be invisible. They want to avoid the shame, they want to avoid the embarrassment. And so you would not expect Jesus to have an interaction with anybody, because nobody should be going to the well at noon. That's morning work. And anybody who would be probably has some baggage, probably has some things they'd like to avoid talking about, being pointed out. And so the great news is that a Samaritan woman came to draw water at noon where Jesus is sitting. And Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" Now, this is incredible for several reasons. The big one is that Jesus, a Jewish traveling rabbi, given by his clothing, very obvious who he is now talking to a woman. Ladies, I don't believe this about any women in here, but at the time, women were the lowest of the low in society. Once a child became 8 or 9, they were more important. And so just, you get a picture here of Jesus breaking a social norm already. He started to talk to her. It's not like he was looking around, sees her coming for water, and says, "Boy, it sure would be nice if I had a drink of water," meaningful glance. It was like, hey, I'm sitting here at this well. I'm curious if you'd be willing to have a conversation with me. Would you be willing to interface with me? I see you're coming to draw water. I'm thirsty. My mom didn't pack me anything in my brown bag. Would you have a conversation with me? Now, imagine from the woman's perspective, this is crazy. She can tell who he is. She can tell what he is. She can see that. And he should know where he is. He should know he's in Samaria. So John helps us out a little bit with kind of her perspective, and he relates to us what she says. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, in case you didn't know, Jesus, because you seem confused talking to me. You're a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman." Again, just not sure if you're clicking all there, so let me just lay the landscape for you. How can you ask me, direct conversation, ask me for a drink of water? And John, as if he knew that someday the people reading his account of this event wouldn't have any idea who the Samaritans, the Jews, and why they were fighting, why they didn't like each other, he tells us, for Jews do not associate with Samaritans. They don't even walk on the same side of the street. That's kind of what you would imagine here. And here's Jesus saying, "Hey, grab a seat." And she's extremely skeptical of him. Because you can imagine, it'd be like, you're the shy nerd walking through the cafeteria, and the jocks are like, hey, we got an open seat at our table. Some practical joke's about to be played on you, right? Somebody's lost a dare, right? You're sitting here like, dude, do you know? Everybody else in this cafeteria knows. You don't talk to me. I'm weird. I'm shameful. I'm embarrassed. But Jesus is sitting here breaking through all these social no-nos. And it's not like he didn't know about them. He grew up as a rabbinic teacher. Like, he lived from the time he was born all the way, now he's like 30, 31, 32. He knows the social norms of his time. And he's just like, you know what? Like the Kool-Aid man, I'm going right through that wall. Oh, yeah. Just breaking down the barriers of all these social norms, these social no-nos. But he knows that he's got to do a little bit of extra work to get her to come with him through those social no-nos, through those social norms. And so he does a bit of a context shift here for her, because he has a plan talking to her, and so he wants to kind of start unveiling that plan to her. And so he says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. If you knew the gift of God, if you knew what God had in store for you, if you knew what God's desire for your life was, and you knew who it was that was offering that to you, then you wouldn't even pay attention to my question, and you'd literally be begging me for living water. This is a huge shift from the conversation she was just having with this guy. I mean, here's Jesus sitting at his table, saying, hey, will you come sit with me? I'd like to talk to you about how you're going to be able to inherit the kingdom of heaven, how you're going to be able to live with God in eternity forever. And she's like, you just wanted me to sit down and you asked me for part of my lunch. What the heck? Like whiplash. So she's not quite picking up on the context yet, right? She's still kind of like reeling from this whole conversation. First off, it shouldn't be happening in the first place. Second, he's now shifted the entire conversation from like basic physical needs. It's noon in the Middle East. He's thirsty. That makes sense. Now he's talking about living water and like all this stuff. She's like, what is happening? And so she doesn't get it at first. And because of that, she challenges him. She says, sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? You can almost hear like the teenage sarcasm. Living water. What do you got? You got nothing, old man. He's not old, but I feel old. You have nothing to draw with. You're not equipped to handle my shame, my embarrassment. You're not equipped to handle me. And you don't understand how difficult it is to get what I need. It's deep. And what is this living water? Water's not alive. What are you talking about? But Jesus is alluding to something that sates more than just physical thirst. And he knows that he needs her to get this. It's not enough to just leave her in confusion. So he continues to help her, and he answers her. He says, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. Now, next week, we're starting a new segment called Captain Obvious, brought to you by Jesus. Yes, we get it. Everyone who drinks water is thirsty again. Literally, like, that's how it works, right? You drink water, and then you're like, oh, that didn't do much. I need more. We get that, right? So we're kind of like there, but, right? You can almost feel it. Jesus is saying, like, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but, and I talked about it a few weeks ago, that's the most important word in the Bible. So if you ever see a but in the Bible, this is true, and the next thing is super important. And so he says, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. This is more than physical. This is deeper than that. This is an amazing gift. This is not even done. Jesus is like, hey, you know what? I'm just giving you these details. Let's go even further into it. He says, indeed, the water that I give them will become in them a spring of water. So not only is it water that I'm going to just give them, but when it's in them, it will literally continue to replenish itself. It won't go away. It'll be welling up in them to eternal life, the gift of God. You see, Jesus in this moment, he's talking to this lady, but he's really talking to all of us. He's saying, hey, I didn't come for the healthy. I came for the sick. I didn't come for everybody who's got it figured out, who knows exactly where they're going to be sitting at their table, and knows how to close off that group and to segment that out and push everybody else away. I didn't come for that group. I came for those who are literally walking into the cafeteria and don't know where they're going to sit because they're ashamed. They're bent from life. Life has broken them down. They have embarrassing things. They have sin. They've made mistakes. I came for those who are thirsty, and I promise to make sure that they're never thirsty again. I came to invite you, lady at the well, to sit at the table of God. I came, Jesus would say to us, to invite you to sit with me. Every single person in here. And if you've got any idea of some of the things you may have made mistakes in, and I'm not looking for answers to any of this, but you can kind of imagine how that might set you apart from somebody that you respect. How that might set you apart from a place you want to be. How you might have the deepest, longingest desire in your life to get somewhere that you now know because of your mistakes, because of your past, because of your sins, that you can never go. You may think that because the world has told you over and over again, you can't have that happiness. You can't have that joy because you suck. You're dirty. You're broken. You're not worth it. You're unworthy. This woman had been hearing that the entire time. She's at the well at noon where nobody else is supposed to be there. And as she starts to understand the context that Jesus has been unpacking for her, as she comes to the dawning realization that there's something bigger going on here, she also starts to realize, oh no, I'm being offered something I can't accept. This is everything I've ever wanted, and I do not deserve to be invited to that table. And so she starts to figure out how to do a strategic retreat. She's literally like, oh, this is bigger than I thought. Like literally this is going in a direction that, I mean, it was already bad, and I was confused but offended. And now it's like, oh, shoot, this guy, he's probably a prophet. This guy is speaking with authority. I've never heard anything like this before, and he's inviting me to sit at this table. He must not know who I am. He must not know my story. Because if he knew my story, there'd be no way I'd get this invitation. If he knew who I was, there's no way he'd be asking me to sit at his table. He'd probably be saying, you don't belong in this school. You don't belong here at all. This table is reserved for people who look better, smell better, talk better than you. But he's sitting there inviting her. And when we get to the point where we're like invited to something that we totally want, but we know we don't deserve, oftentimes we don't accept it. Wait, you're trying to give that? I don't deserve that. My hands are too filthy. You don't know what I've done. You can't give that to me. I'm out. And Jesus detects that in her. Jesus senses that in her. And so before she can try to get away, he holds on to her tighter. And he says, go call your husband and come back. I understand that you're going to need some sort of cover, something to help you feel safer as we do this interaction, as we go deep on this. So go get your husband, but come back. Not go get your husband, then you stay home, I'll talk to him. No. Come back. But for the lady, this is the shoe drop moment. This is where she recognizes the practical joke that's been played on her by the jock table as she goes to sit all by herself. She knew it was too good to be true. And so she definitely now needs to get away. She knows she's got to go. So she responds to Jesus and she says, I have no husband. It's nice what you're offering me. It's great, but it sounds like what you're looking for I'm not compatible with. It sounds like the kind of person that you would like is somebody who has a husband, who's lived a good life, who's lived in a way that would be upstanding and that people would look at and say, yeah, God definitely wants that person because of how clean they are. But I'm not that person. I have no husband. I'm dirty. I'm not going to go into details for you random Jew sitting at the well as I'm trying to get my water. But just know I can't do the thing that you're asking, and so I got to go. I got to go. She's trying to jump away from this dream, right? She was being told a dream that's turned into a rejection nightmare. And she's trying to get away from it. But Jesus won't let her because he's kind of pesky like that. And so he says to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. Hey, I already know your shame. Let me lay it out for you. Oh, no thank you? Can I pass? Like, I get it. I'm leaving. You don't have to make it worse, right? Like, hey, yeah, you invited me to sit. I was on my way down. Then you said, hey, I know about what happened last summer. Hey, I know what happened with him or with her. Hey, I know what happened in college. Hey, I know that business deal that, hey, I know about your taxes. And you're like, oh, stop the sit. I better stand. I don't belong here. Can we just not talk about that out loud? I don't want everybody else to know. Let me just pass. But he goes into more detail. He says, the fact is, you've had 5 husbands. She's like, I told you I didn't want to talk about this. 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. I know who you are. What you have just said is quite true. I know exactly who you are. He is saying to us at the same time, I know your story. I know who you are. I know exactly who you are. And I knew before you came out to the well, I knew who you were, and I said, hey, please come sit. Please come sit. I have a gift for you. I have something for you. Please come sit. And at this point, we're like 30,000-foot view for her. We're thinking, okay, he knows, and he's offered. Shoot, take that deal. We're telling that girl, like, please, just say yes. We know how this goes. Say yes, please, and thank you. That's it. Just take it. Like, yeah, too good to be true. Great. Open your hands and just take it. But how many of us in that same situation would literally be like, I can't take that. That's too much for me. I don't deserve that. I've been told over and over again that only the clean, only the upstanding, only the righteous get God's love, get God's forgiveness, get God's presence. Only them. Everyone else is out. I'm not in that group, and you're trying to make me sit here, and I don't belong here. If your friends show up, they're going to kick me out anyway. I'll save myself the embarrassment. I know how this works. And so the woman said to him, I know that Messiah, the Savior, called Christ, which means King, is coming. And when he comes, he's going to explain everything. He's going to tell me the things I expect to hear. He's going to tell me that I don't belong. That yes, he came to save Israel. Yes, he came to redeem the world, but I'm not part of that. I was out so long before, I'm disqualified. And Jesus doesn't let her sit in that spot because he knows what's happened. He knows her story. He knows our story. And so he says to us, as we look at him, we say, hey, you know what? I get it. Like, you're awesome. Jesus, you have a great track record at being amazing. But it's just not for me. It's not for us. And he says, I, the one speaking to you, I am the one who gives that offer. I am the one who makes that redeeming sacrifice, the one who offers salvation. I am that person. And I'm telling you, please come sit. And it's in this moment that we should be shattered, because she's shattered. Every expectation that she has from her culture is shattered at this moment. And how do we know that? It's because she left her water jar at the well and ran back to town. She goes back to town to tell everyone, to tell all the people of what's happened inside of her. She's abandoned her entire purpose for being there, which was to avoid shame and embarrassment, and goes to the town to tell people that she's been invited despite the fact that she has shame and embarrassment. She goes back to tell them, hey, because of who I am and because of your rejection of me and how you guys treat me and how you think about me, I've been invited to sit, and I know some of your laundry too, and I think he'd let you sit too. I think he'd let you sit too. And it's in this interaction that we sit here, and I'm challenged. I'm challenged about this, and I kind of think that all of us should be. And so we have to just be honest about who's at our table. Let's be honest about our tables, right? And even more so, can we just determine like the specifics of what informs the boundaries of our table? Can we look at like, how do we decide? Is it race? Is it politics? Is it gender identity? Who can sit at our table? And this challenge is super awkward, so let's go further. Who do you not want to sit on a plane next to? I know for some of you in here, it's me. I don't smell that bad. No, you think like sit next to a pastor on a plane? No, thank you. Like the only time I'll pray to God is to say, God, please don't send that pastor this way. But I have 2 kids, and there are days where one of them wants to make sure the other one does not live through that day. And as we get on a plane, you're thinking, also, the one time I would pray to God, do not let them sit in my row. Oh, and not behind me either. Maybe they're on the wrong plane. Who do we not want to sit next to on a plane? Every single one of us, when I asked that question, pictured somebody or a type of someone. But if you're not quite couching this, let's go into a word picture. There was a guy named Peter Singer, and he was an ethics philosopher. And he said, we all have something called a moral circle, and it starts with you. And then it goes to the people around you, right? So all the people around you, the people that fill in the rest of this. So we've got all sorts of people. And a moral circle are the people that we consider to be kin. Kin meaning kind or like. And we treat kin with kindness. It's the same root word. We treat them how we would want to be treated. It's actually really easy for us to treat people who are in our family, in what we consider our family, that could be friends, with kindness. But it's really easy outside to treat them as other, alien, villains. And when Jesus is coming to us, he's literally saying, would you please just stretch your circle? Would you just expand your circle? Watch me, is what he's saying. Watch me as I sit at the table, and anybody walking by has a seat. Anybody is invited to this. There is no reason for us to close our circles off to anybody that Jesus wouldn't. And Jesus didn't close his circle off to anybody. He invited everyone. Now I recognize that this causes discomfort, and that this is really difficult to do, and that this walks us into interactions that we may not be able to handle, that we may not understand. So I want to give you 2 tools. The first tool is we need to approach every conversation with curiosity, with the idea that we're going to learn something from somebody. We need to recognize that I don't know everything, and I need to ask, what do I have to learn from this group of people? The people who aren't like me, who don't like me. What kind of questions can I ask these people? How can I move on in my life as I want to grow? How can I move on forward and build relationships with people I have nothing in common with? I do it through curiosity. And there's a truth about curiosity, and it's that arrogant people don't ask questions. Now, if you're in here and thinking, I don't ask questions, I'm not saying you're arrogant. I'm just saying arrogant people don't ask questions. But curiosity, by contrast, is an exercise of humility. It's how we gain. It's one of the ways we can gain humility, how we can begin to understand our shortcomings and the things that we need to grow in and the areas that we haven't quite figured out, but I notice that you've got something figured out, and I'd really like for you to help me with that. I'd really like to do life with you. I would like to come together with you and understand you. We may not always agree, though, right? There will be times when we have to confront. There will be times when we're going to have difficulty interacting with somebody. We're going to look at them and say, like, hey, you're doing something that harms others or harms yourself or is just wrong, and we don't agree with you. And so we ask the questions then, like, well, if I'm always curious, I'm always asking questions, when do I get to the confrontation part? Because we like to fight. It's what we like to do. And so let's do it the way Jesus does it. Jesus only approached with care and concern. He confronted the woman at the well. He told her all of the baggage. He told her everything that she'd ever done. He said, hey, you're living in sin now. And I'm concerned for you. And I have only care for you. And when we approach other people with love and concern, we say, hey, I love you and I'm concerned. We may not agree at the end of the day, but we don't leave the conversation with hate. We don't leave it with bitterness. And we all grow. And I guarantee if we start to practice this, it will stretch your faith. It will stretch your faith to the point where you didn't realize that it could get that big. You see, all of us have a view of God, and that view of God is set by the size of our table, right? I have a tiny table up here. Hopefully my view of God is bigger than that, but this is my table today. And some of us, our tables are like this. And that's okay. I don't want you to feel like I'm mad at you or anything, but literally we have an opportunity to grow, and it's through curiosity, and it's through only confrontation with care and concern. And you see, the thing is, if we can grow our view of God, then we get to grow our table too. You see, our view of God grows as our table gets bigger. The more people you invite into a conversation, the more people that you interact with, the more people that you try to grow and learn from, the bigger your view of God gets. You see, our tables are too small. All of our tables are too small. You might have the biggest table in this room, and that's amazing in comparison. But in comparison to Jesus, we got room to go, and we got room to grow. And so all of us need to grow our tables, because all of us have a view of God that's not quite big enough. And if there's a truth that I have ever learned in my life, it's that God has always been bigger than we thought.
Leave the rest in the Father's hands. All my cares I will rest in the Father's hands. Leave the rest. Leave the rest in the Father's hands. Yes, I will. Hey, well, God bless you, branches. We love you. Look forward to seeing you next week. Go enjoy the sun, the weather, family, all the things. We love you. We'll see you next Sunday.